Good morning, everybody. I hope you're all well today. Yeah, as you can see, we love that video so much, so we decided to run it over and over again. So yeah, good morning and welcome to the Tech Talks. Today is our next episode, and today we decided to focus a bit on the programming side, on the automation side, to be precise, because we always talk about APIs, we always talk about scripting, support for scripting and programming features on all of our products. And we always say that it's quite important to have those features. And this is a great tool for our customers and for our end users to ease their pains. And so today we decided to ask one of our company-wide experts on all the things scripting, programming, and API, Mr. Markus Nikolski. So he's going to be our presenter today. You will also see a couple of live demonstrations. As always, just a few housekeeping points. So you are all on mute, as always. If you have any questions, please use the Q&A panel. Which is accessible by a small button that says Q&A basically. And why we ask you to use Q&A panel instead of like using chat for questions is because we can track all the questions and all the answers and send them over to you along with the link to the recording of this session and along with the slides that you will see today. So I'm Kirill, I'm gonna be your host today, and I think it's time to give the floor to Markus. Markus, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Hello and welcome everybody. So I was asked to talk about APIs, and this is a nice topic because I'm playing with this since a long while. And I want to give you some light on this topic, but this will be not a deep dive. It's more a generalistic view today. So APIs, why we need them is in general that we want to interconnect some components, if a software to software, computer device, to have conversation, to execute something. Yeah. And finally, it's end up in automation that we can drive something in a more better way. Yeah? So this is what API basically do. And we find APIs everywhere. If it's on your local laptop, Windows operating system, Linux, or even IoT devices, you have more and more in your house. Yeah? So what it means for us, we will see more indeed, but let's go first step into a general view. So it's all about how we interface and talk to each other. So it's driven by humans. So if we are in contact like we are in this moment, we can't see us. This may be a disadvantage, but however, we see how a person behaves, and we have a channel to talk to them by using audio in the right language that we can exchange information, and we maybe also execute something because of this. So this is translated then to the next stage. So if we want to manage computers, yeah, if it's your laptop again or your switch you have to configure, we have an interface to talk to the device. So it's maybe not based on audio conversation. Maybe you can in the meanwhile, but mostly we're using keyboard, mouse, something like this. Yeah, and the feedback is often visual. That we see on the screen or on the printed page what the outcome is of my activity. Yeah? And the same with the CLI if I do some show commands. Yeah? But it's really designed for human-machine conversation. Yeah? So in the next stage, we have an API. So these are designed that computer can talk to another computer, yeah? Or in switch to another switch or to the management. Yeah? So this is a place where APIs works, but the main rules are still the same. We need the right interface and we need the right language through this interface to utilize this capability. Yeah. So this is nothing different here behind. So if we move on to our network gears, so what we have today is on network switches, we do have CLI since many years available. This is our entry point to do something. We do have SNMP, which is maybe good for monitoring, maybe even for configuration. But SNMP is not really an API and is really weird to use. So this is really for insider, let me say. And since a while, we have more and more APIs appearing on our switches or across the board. Yeah, even access points have an API, even our Extreme Management Center. Yeah? So this is what we have as an offer on the network side. So the landscape changed a bit. So today we sit down and configure something. So if we have a mission to deploy several VLANs across the network, we have to think about it a bit. We have to touch multiple devices. We type in commands and maybe we do some potential mistakes. Yeah? And we have to troubleshoot them. But that's the way how it works. And if you are a good admin, you shouldn't be worried so long so that you maybe take several minutes. But if you're a beginner, maybe it takes up to hours if you have trouble then. So what you can do if you're more professional, you're moving on using scripting. Yeah? So you have a bulk of commands, you have maybe intelligent scripting like Python or other tooling to do it more in a clever way, but it's still a CLI exchange. And this challenges us in the point that we get feedback like for humans. So the show output is made for our eyes and not for a computer. So we have to scrape and figure out and catch the right data. And this is really too bad. So what the next step is that we have scripting that really can talk straight away to the API. So this is, we call it transaction safe, because I do a call, carry data in addition to my call, and I have an action on the device and get a response. So all what is belong to this call is we call it transaction. So if something goes wrong, the whole transaction goes wrong. I don't have to roll it back then. Yeah, and this is also a nice thing in this API world. Yeah. I just see in the chat box that someone has problem with the quality of slides, or I don't know, but I cannot change this behavior. Okay, I move on. This is so the general thinking about APIs. So let's step a bit back and see where APIs becomes used. Yeah? And I look a little bit into the future. So if we have to create a fabric based on Fabric Connect, we can set up 1 or 2 switch, configure them as required to form a fabric. So I set up IS routing and SBB parameter, all what's needed, and interconnect them. Yeah, and this is my little fabric, just 2 switches. Yeah, and they are designed in a way that they're working how I believe is right to drive a fabric. Yeah, and in the next stage, I adding switches. The adding means with this new zero-touch capability, we are capable to detect a new switch. So a new switch which comes out of the fabric from the box, yeah, and attached to your fabric environment, they see that a fabric exists already, learning the parameter and joins the fabric. This is something where we are not today, right now, but this is in the pipe and it's coming soon, so that we have an easy start. You have to respect some few rules, but it's not complicated. But this makes life really easy to build and create bigger fabrics. And you have very low risk to break something. So that means also that people mounting these devices into the rack and connect them together, they can do not much wrong, and they don't need the high skill level about fabric. Yeah, they can just do the job and connect them together. In the next stage, we may be growing more and more, and we attach buildings, whatever, and you see that how they are interconnected doesn't really matter in the fabric. If you do it full mesh, partial, single armed, whatever makes sense for you. Yeah? The real outcome is that your fabric becomes abstracted. You only focusing on points where you have to deliver services. Yeah? That's the beauty of the fabric in general. Yeah? So this auto-forming, this is something we have on the way. It's partially done already, but let's say end of the year, we have this under control. And guess what? It works via APIs under the hood. Yeah? And the next stage is to attach servers. Yeah? So if we're using a data center maybe, and we bring the server into play, we just have to consider that we have bare metal server. as well, we have hypervisors, so we have to deal with them. So let's see later on how we do this indeed. But however, we have also an access side. So on the left-hand side, let me create the access world, and we're using floor switches, which are maybe, let's say, low-end switches, which are maybe not fabric capable, but fabric aware. So here we're using an add-on, we call it fabric attach, which bring us the beauty of fabric to the switch without really expanding the real fabric itself. Yeah, that means the switch is able to ask for service, providing VLANs, but it didn't have any IS, whatever SPB thing in place. Yeah, and this is a good extension for your network to keep complexity also small. Yeah? You have clear borders. You have to create services. This is something you do in maybe in the data center or whatever place makes sense. So services alone is just an ISID, a number, which can be layer 2 or even layer 3. You do maybe with VRF. So this is something you have to declare. We cannot really automate this, but at least we have some nice helping tools to make it in an easy way. Yeah, but then there are services in place, and you can use the services by binding them straight statically to ports. Yeah, like I maybe animate a little bit for the servers, but we don't really like to do so much manual anymore. So it should be automated. That means we don't want this, except maybe we have firewalls, we have some special equipment. But by default, a device like a switch should have only the management VLAN, not more. And all others should appear on demand. So if we have end devices and we attach them to the network, why not the network should deal with the device they see in front of them? So what we can do is we utilize LLDP, and if we detect it's an access point and we see, oh, it is even our access point, and they can do maybe also a fabric attached signaling or even not, still we see that is a device we can manage, and we classify the device and we can onboard and connect them. It's a kind of auto-sensing and connect mechanism. And this is without any access control at all. Yeah? So what you can do in addition, and this makes a lot of sense in case of security concerns, as well for automation, that you turn on access control and access, and on the data center side, that you turn on endpoint tracking. So what it means is that we have a detection algorithm. So we're using the basement is access control, if you want. So it's a radius request, which is sent out for a new device appears. So if it's a MAC address or an 802.1x login, we have an authentication process. We have an authorization process. And authorization means we send back these resources. So this means VLAN and ISID. We connect them to the right service. And it works on access with a classical access control, but also in a data center. So we call it endpoint tracking because it's not equal to access control. So here we have an element that we're using MAC-based authentication, but we didn't block any port. We didn't block any service. We just listen and ask the radius. And if they have an answer to dispatch the device to another service, we do so. Yeah. And this works on the fly. So this helps us to avoid manual configuration about this attachments. Yeah? So if a device traveling, or even a virtual machine is traveling, maybe all the day long, we can still following and provide the service they need in the right place. Yeah? Then the management center we have is orchestrating our network gears. Yeah? So they can follow and see, and you can also configure the components if it's statically, or you formulate just the rules if you want. Yeah? Also here, we have a bunch of APIs in place. Yeah? So we have an API, we call it northbound interface on the top, but XMC is able to talk to the switches by SNMP, by API calls. And if you have no other choice, even with CLI, but we love to avoid this because CLI is still slow, and CLI scraping is not what we want to do. So this is our fabric automation, which utilize APIs everywhere. So it means between our switches, between management instances, and we participate with other environments. So our northbound interface take care of this. So to get more light on this management world, let's move on. So we do have two main manager in place. One is the left-hand side one, which is the Extreme Fabric Automation, is designed for IP Fabric only, so for our SLX platform. So if you have a data center and you operate with SLX, this will be your choice. If you have an VSP-based or Axos and Axos-based or other networks, you may go for the Extreme Management Center, also called XMC. They using all what I mentioned before, APIs mainly, if we can. SNMP for monitoring is still good, and CLI if really, really needed to operate the network. But on the other end, the cross-domain automation comes more and more into play. That means customers have already something in place to operate the server or storage or whatever, and they want to make it more in sync. So today is maybe a kind of paperwork. So if the server guy needs a new VLAN, maybe new routing, they have to write a request, send it to his manager. The manager goes to another team. Another team say, yeah, not today, maybe tomorrow. And then after a longer while, they get then the service in place. And the interaction is slow, is maybe something is forgotten, whatever. So this is an admin process nobody really likes. And for whatever reason, teams from the server world and networking world looks like they're talking a different language. Man. It's not really that they are always live on the same world. However, it's not a problem. Thanks to the cross-automation APIs, we can bring things together. So if something gets deployed on the server world, then it's right in time, the network following this change by coupling together this management tool from the server world to our XMC. Yeah? Simple like this. So one tool which more and more appears on the market to be used is Ansible. So Ansible is a tool which is free, and then Ansible Tower is a commercial version. It's driven by Red Hat. And they have many connectors to a different world. So here they can manage bare metal server, in my example here, VMware or Hyper-V, you name it. And then another end, they have support for networking gears. Yeah? So they can go straight away to our switches and start configuring them. So you see, you have a more complex interaction, and Ansible is capable to talk to our XMC and to the devices. So what is a better choice is the question. Eh? So in the first moment in time, if I meet a customer, they're asking me, have your APIs on your switch? And I say, yes, that's right, we have it. And we have also an Ansible playbook, just the name how they use it to provide integration. We have it in place. However, Ansible have no awareness of our fabric, have no awareness of topology, have no real awareness of status, but XMC have. So what is maybe better, and this is, we don't maybe want that the server guy driving Ansible mess up my switch config. So what is better is to call XMC in a controlled API call and say, please provide me this service. Then XMC is setting a process to say, okay, that's a valid call, write authorization, and then start realizing the change and provide feedback. And this makes more sense. So let's have a look a little bit in Ansible. So if you go and search for networking gears, you will find the Ansible URL, which providing you a little bit details about network automation. They are keen to drive network automation straight to the device. However, it's half mile because again, Ansible is not designed to manage networking gear. They are designed to manage servers. This is a clear mission. And network is an extension. So if you search for our traditional switches like Axos, VOS, and SLX, you find records in Ansible world. And you see you can download here instruction how to use this module. So if you start installing Ansible, you have everything on board already. And there's Ansible Galaxy, which is a kind of application store where you can pull in additional modules if needed. But this is maybe for experts and advanced use. So I'm not sure how much familiar you are with Ansible, but let's give you a taste. So I make a little demo for you. So I let roll the video to see how we can work with an with XMC. So here in my video, I start on my Linux host. I do have some few files. One is called host, and it's nothing more than an IP address in it, which translate my keyword XMC to an IP address. And then we have a playbook I'm calling now in an editor, and this playbook do all the work. So they do it's a login to our northbound interface. You see the login credentials, something like this. Then later on, we have to expose maybe some data. So I want to catch the XMC version. I want to know which version is in front of me. And then later on, I pull all devices which are loaded on XMC currently. It's just really a very small fragment of information, but it's just to have something in place. So you're calling the Ansible playbook command using our file and let them run. So you see the execution goes fast. And if we go back to the top, you see here login. So I expose the token and session. There's really an HTTP TLS protected session. We see below the version I was catching. And then you see in the data structure, and it's really cool. You have right away a data structure and not a CLI. You have all the switches currently active on my XMC. So this is basically what Ansible do. So they have a playbook, which is a description how it should be. And then they let it run, and then all the components, server, storage, network, will be adjusted for this description what they made. This is the concept of work. So next step is let's have a look a bit deeper about our products. So I was thinking maybe I should mention more or less all the products categories we have. So starting on left-hand side with SLX platform for our IP fabric, access switches, VSP, then wireless in the middle. XMC is our management environment. EFA is the acronym for the Extreme Fabric Automation, our other management component, and XIQ is our cloud-driven service, so Cloud IQ. And all of them, you will be not surprised, they have APIs. Yeah? So we have on some devices, let me say, traditional APIs, and this is only a small fragment. We have maybe even more. And in the middle, we have REST. The REST is, in the meanwhile, the common standard to create or build or present an API. And REST is in general term, if someone say, oh yes, I have a REST API, that means all and nothing. Why I say this is we have to see a little bit into the protocol stack afterwards. So first of all, if you have a question about the API, you want to dig deeper into it, URL access, and this is common that you using our domain extremenetwork.com, but you put on front developer. With this keyword developer extremenetwork.com in your URL, you will be automatically redirected to our web page where we host all the API documentation. The API documentation are always online. You will not find a single PDF document. That's normal and standard. Yeah. And we have also our documentation typically wise on board of the device itself in addition. So we have a special URL before you enable the API, you can touch and you can even test something on the API. So that's a good thing if you do to become familiar with this environment. Okay, so where stand REST for? So representation, state transfer. Sound interesting? Let's see what this really means. So all of you should know that we have a network stack, like in the OSI model. So we have maybe Ethernet even below and so on, then IP and TCP, so it's session oriented. We have on top always, we have always security, so transport layer security, also called in the old days SSL, in place. No other should be used. And on top is running this REST presentation, I will say, and those are REST calls, which are fairly like HTTP calls, if you see how they are structured, yeah? Or very, very similar. They have a header and such kind of elements. And on top, you do have by the way, there's a typo. This should call XML and not XMC. That's a funny one. So it's XML or JSON. So how REST give you, so this is what I say is a kind of language. You can have the data presentation in different formats. Yeah? So XML, I'm sorry for this typo, have to be changed. And JSON is a typical way how the data presented, and the application is sitting on top and catching the data I'm working with. Yeah? So we have this function in place, always transportation, security interface language, and the application on top have to deal with in principle. So API, we say more or less sitting here, or is part of the stack, but sitting here. And if you believe the life is simple like this, I'm sorry, it's not really, really true. So APIs are much more complex. So we have different APIs, different stacks, different flavors. So this is the reality. It's not really a pain, but this is, you have to keep in mind, if someone say, oh, we have this API, that doesn't mean really it's what you expect maybe. Yeah? So you have to have a deeper look and see what's presented. Okay, so maybe you like to know how to use really APIs. So I was thinking Python is a fairly common script language today to do something, to program something, and even for beginners, maybe a good one. I'm not sure I can educate you to become a developer. I don't believe so, but I'll give you a little taste how the world is working. Yeah? Let's start simple. So we want to manage our output. So if you have a Python routine, the first action you have to make is doing a print and say, hello world. Yeah. So it's a single command you see in the middle of the text, and the output is on the right-hand side. It's just world on your screen. So it's pretty straightforward, easy to use, no problem. Yeah? So, but the world is not so simple. So what developers love to use is subroutines to encapsulate some function. Yeah, and this makes a lot of sense. So what we see here is that I have multiple lines for the same job. This doesn't look so attractive in the first moment in time, but often we have to redo again the same similar job. If we have one routine doing this, I don't have to repeat myself in the code anymore. I just reference to the routine, that's it. And this is the beauty on it. So you see on bottom that this command calling my routine, handing over my text. And in the routine itself, we have a takeover, the catching the text and do the print. But here the routine adds some whatever intelligence, so I just add an exclamation mark to say hello world exclamation mark. Yeah? It's not so sophisticated, but just as you see the mechanics. So subroutines are for sure more complex, adding more value, but it's part of your script. Yeah. So the next stage is using classes. So classes means that I have to import something from another file. I maybe even didn't have written this file, have no clue. I just read the description like an API description, import this and use them. So you see in the first line, this import action. In the second line, I do a reference of the class and calling a function inside the class called doPrint with handing over data. So here's again, this relationship exists and the output looks even more funny. That means we have here in front of us a black box. So we have an agreement what this function should do, this class should do, and how to be used. And they're adding some value, but how they do it, it's not necessarily exposed. Yeah. Okay, fair enough. So you learn your lesson. Nobody stop you now to start coding. And if you really want to do something in Python world, you can find a lot of good examples in the internet space. However, I have one page more for coding. That's enough for today. It's this one, even more lines. So you have learned already that I have to import something to get the function. Yeah? So on top, what you see is that I importing a northbound XMC module this one I have written, by the way. So it does not exist today in the internet space. I do have a block where I declare some variables. I have to say where my XMC is located. I have to say how to log in, like a username, password, or what I'm using here in reality is an OAuth2 authentication mechanism, which is state of the art. So it looks like a token and a special user ID. They're only able to use the API. They cannot log in via web interface, and they have restriction what they really can call or not call. So this is a typical way how this has to be used. So in the block in the middle, so if I go with my laser pointer to this next block, you see that I'm calling this imported module, and it's repeating the name. This is the way how it works in a moment. So is what I do, I initialize the module. I waking up the module and create, we call it an object, and hand over my variable I was using on top here in this handover call. Yeah, so I give them 3 parameters. You see here the content, and they do some login. You have no clue how they do it. However, you get back in return, which is session, and session is then an object which is your hot session. So you are logged in. Yeah, and then I reference to this object I now got back and say, please give me from you, XMC, all your devices. In this call, I don't have to hand over data because I want to see all the devices. Maybe another routine exists. Find the device, and then I have to spell the name I'm interested in. Yeah? There's another function. Okay. So I'm calling this function and get a return result. Here in my case, data is another variable. And then I do something here to expose the data. So I do a for loop. And so this is a list of information, or better to say a dictionary. So I go through this information line by line and do a print to exposing the data. Yeah? So as a result, you should see something like this. So we see the IP address I was providing, the nickname we have seen in XMC, and that's it. You have tons of other data here available. This is just a little fragment. Yeah? So you want to see this in real time? Why not? So let's do another demo. So I will do a RESTconf call, but now against VSP. And so you see I'm swapping a bit. So it was explained with XMC, but we can do the same with VSP directly. Yeah? If this makes sense, it's another story to do something on devices straight or via XMC, but okay, just example. You see, this is an IDE, there's a developer environment where I have also created a class, and you see here variables. So the structure is always the same. I have one VLAN I want to add and delete. So I have some action made. There's a login as well. I have some error checking if something goes wrong with the login. And if anything goes well, I want to add this VLAN, I want to modify something, and I want to delete the VLAN. Yeah? So it's like a life cycle. I let it run. So on the bottom, you will see an output box. So, and you see the API calls goes really quick. Yeah. So it's calling this API in a fast way and just executing this desired commands. Yeah? So I have made another example which is more complex. So I'm looping here through a range of VLANs. So I have a start point is 40 as a VLAN, and counting 10 times this VLAN, creating a bunch of VLANs. Yeah? To challenge a bit more this environment. So I let it run as well, and here I maybe have to expose a bit more this output area. It goes also quick. You see some calls are quicker than the other one, and I have to scroll back and forth. You see that not necessarily all code goes right. Yeah? So you see also that I was trying to assign this VLAN to a trunk, but it was forbidden. Maybe the trunk doesn't exist, or I have something other misconfigured. So you get also feedback about this. This is what I call transaction safe. And here you see all the activities. I want not to go through all the individual, but it was adding a bunch of VLAN, modifying the VLAN name, and then doing something in addition. This is the class I've written, and you see there's many lines behind. So using really APIs is not a trivial task. However, that you have seen this one time. So APIs are really made for developers. That's what I want to flag out here. However, if you have this nice class, is the life much easier. Yeah. Okay. What we can do is we can use existing stuff already. So what we do as Extreme, we exposing some useful script on GitHub. So you can go via this URL and download. So this is the easy one. You just pick the code you're interested in. What you have to do, this is your responsibility, is to inspect the code and test them to be confident they do what you like to, or what you expect, more or less. And if you're confident anything goes right, you can use them. Yeah, that means we are, as Extreme or even other vendors publishing things on GitHub, we are not in duty necessarily to fix bugs or that anything have to be proven perfect. Yeah, we try our best to make it robust and proven, but again, you are also here in the loop to validate this in your case. Okay, so let me go for an example where we can use it. So as we was talking in the beginning that we have a fabric with many components, different device types and different function like fabric attached proxy and border nodes and in fabric, whatever, and VSP and XOS. So a colleague was writing a script a while ago to manage all the services here in this example for layer 2 VSNs across multiple devices. So let's see how it works. So this is a daily job you may have to perform. We can do it in the meanwhile perfectly via XMC. This is something we have to push again because this was not so well known, but however, years back, it was not possible. So the script was helping us to fill the gap. So how it looks like. Let me roll another video to show you how to consume it. So let's go in an easy way. We just go for Extreme in GitHub and we should find something. Oh yeah, scripting sound good. And then we move on to NetSide, which is the old name of XMC. So NetSide is important, then scripting was good too. And then I scroll down, you see plenty of scripts here. So I pick the create layer 2 VSN one, download this file, which is an XML file, which contains a Python code, but also metadata. Then I move to XMC, scripting world, and add my script. So I pick this XML file and load it then back to XMC, voila. And I use a magnifier to find this new module, VSN, voila. And if you now open it, you see some text, description, and you see the colleague, they spent a lot of time to make it right. And you should prove if this appearing in the right category in a menu, is the right authorization. And if anything right, you move to your switching world, select the, in my case, 4 switches and go to task. And here you see that the new menu item appears automatically. We ask for port, so I will search for the XOS ports. So let's use unit 1, port 5 on 2 switches because I have 2 of them, yes. And then I do the same with the VSP on the other, and maybe here's my server attached there. You see the notation is slightly different. Okay, fair enough. Going forward. Now it's a parameter field. So here you see that we can control a dialog box coming from the script. So fill in ISET, VLAN name, VLAN ID, and if tagged or not. This is like global, and then you can specify VLAN ID and tagging individual per switch in addition to make it more relevant, yeah, for this device. And finally, we kick the workflow. Now it runs. Execution is in process. We see already some information they use from the start, like what you have provided. And then you see a green check mark, which indicate they are finished. And if you scroll down, you see all the CLI interaction. So here was the CLI-driven thing. And finally, the CLI command, which was really used to perform this action. So it's not bad, goes quick. So this is a way how to consume existing functionalities. Yeah, so it makes sense that you have a look and don't invent the wheel again, then using our GitHub repository. Yeah. Okay, I want to also touch one point, which is our workflow manager. So this manager is a module which helping you to have multiple Python scripts or other function which is embedded to create your own workflows, yeah, for your own needs. So it's a kind of customization. I will not say that you have to create your own features now, but each customer has some own wishes we can't fulfill. And with this workflows is a nice extension. You see, by the way, that we have an system space and the user space. So the system space is always available. So where we have our inside workflows, we are giving by default with the system. And the user space is made for your own workflows. Yeah. What you have to know, you have to have the advanced license in place to use the user space. But this is the way how it works with licensing. Okay, then moving on. So you have a structure of groups and workflows you can create. So you provide a name. You have a palette of activities you drag and drop into it, which can be a Python script or in Bash call on XMC, HTTP action, so you can call something from another API or web server to pull down something. You can write email out of the box and so on. And also we have gateways, so to fork or to join something together and control the path. So this should be a way to go through these different blocks if you want. This makes more visual how this execution runs. Yeah. And finally, we have also ability to write to the event in this log. This is important to have in kind of audit trail, yeah, what the script have really done. And what else? You have for each box and detailed parameter level. So if you select one of this yellow block, you have a different content depends on the type. Yeah. What I didn't mention is we have also timers, so we can deal with timeouts and do something. So it's fairly intelligent, this module. So I will give you as next also a small video to go through how to create a very simple workflow. So what I do is I just create a new record. So always good to provide a good name. Maybe this is not the greatest one, but good for testing. And then you see that I drag and drop the Perl module once a time and connect them via this link, this arrow together, provide a name. So normally you should mention here a function you have behind this block. Then I'm using a decision gateway, okay, and add some more boxes just to have a better playground. And I simply say up and down. So what I want to achieve is that I'm using a path here to one of them. So I connect both at the same time. And afterwards, I want to join them together back to this next stage. So you see, you can move and drag and drop. This is made for kids. And what you have to do as next is you have to add maybe variable. So I create a variable called direction, which is valid across the whole workflow. And this variable will be relevant for the path selection afterwards. So it's workflow wide, it's a type of string. And I also want to expose this to the user which calling this workflow. So I give a nice text and a display. Say which type of input I expect. So it's just pure text or combo box. That means I offer already values. They have to choose. They cannot type in text itself. And I map it to the variable. I do here a mistake, and this means the first run will fail, but we see later. But you see on the conditional gateway that I'm now using a validation of a variable. So I pick my direction variable and prove them if they equal to up or if they equal to down, they should go as a specific path. So you can have also fork to multiple targets at the same time. There's no problem. We have some more intelligent operators here in place. So we have to satisfy a little bit the control logic. So if you have a Python script, you have to have at least one Python line. So I just do a simple print to have text in it. Okay, up and down. So you have just a single liner in my moment in time. And we are good to go. I think saving is important, that it becomes right. I remove one variable which called devices to avoid that I get prompted by selecting a device, because there's no relation in the moment to a device itself. Let it run. And what you miss here is during execution, you see no prompt about the user input. I've forgotten this. You see the first box is executed, turned to green, but the other stay gray. That means unused. Oops, not good. So feedback works. I'm going back and I understand, oops, I should fix this user input problem. Going back to this area and just turn on the flags, which are on the right-hand side, is required, and you have to prompt the user and let it run again. And now you get prompted. Yeah, this makes sense. You see the fields. You can also provide already a default value if you want, no problem. And then you see the execution looks much more sensible. Yeah, voila. Welcome to your first workflow. You see also in each box the output they provided, so you can understand and track this afterwards. So this, also we have environment variables we're using for execution. You see all of them here in the right context. Pretty cool. And it's just to give you a taste about our workflow manager. Let's stop this video because it's running endless. So I more or less reached my presentation, and I do have some few backup slides to explain where we're using the automation. Maybe I can go through if no other question comes up so far.
Yeah, Marcus, I think we still have time to go through the backup slides, but before we actually go into that, I think we have got a couple of questions. And the first one, it is quite an important one. Do we support third-party devices with workflow manager?
Okay,
XMC. Yeah,
it's a good one. Okay, so XMC is capable to discover other vendor devices like Cisco, HP, you name it. There's plenty of them. And even if we don't know the vendor, we can discover and onboard the device. Yeah? So they should be part of the XMC repository, but not necessarily. Yeah. So if we have this device, the other vendor discovered, we classify them and we know how to treat them. That means we know how Cisco CLI behaves. Yeah? We know how a Juniper CLI behaves. Yeah? So we have plenty of vendors already on board. But in case we hit a special vendor we never saw before, we can even adapt them. Yeah. In the worst case, we have to go down to some XML file tuning. But I saw it in my time only 1 or 2 times that we really have to do it. But you can expect the standard Linux host, and then there's no problem at all. Then executing a workflow against a device is easy because we know what type of device we have. We know the login, how they behave in case of what credential we have to take, which protocol, and so on. But you can also force this in a workflow to specify by yourself in this moment in time. Yeah. So you have plenty of choices. We have a built-in intelligence, which works already great. If it's not good enough, we can tune. So this is what we have. This should address this need. What we don't have right now in the full-flavored type of thing is API calls to other vendors. You can do it, but you end up really in Python coding finally to do the API calls. We cannot hide the complexity here in this moment in time. Yeah. Okay, next one.
Okay, and the next one is quite related to the previous one. Can we say add some fields for the settings like VLAN or something like that, to control them inside XMC using variables rather than going with scripts like we do for our hardware?
I'm not sure I catch this. So does this belong to workflows, right?
Yeah, so I think that the question is like, can we, with the third-party devices, can we add some fields and use the, let's say, more or less standard variables inside XMC instead of going into
Oh,
subroutine?
yes, indeed. So I do have a 2-day workshop explaining the Python coding as well XMC, and this explain you how to use all the things. So this is maybe important as a basement. If I just go to our XMC in our lab, what you can do always is using parameter fields we have in place. So we have two main options. One is if we talk about VLANs and they are related to a site, yeah, like here on this Fabric Connect site, we can access this data you see on the bottom, yeah, and use them in scripting if you want. So there's no problem. This is thanks to our northbound interface. We have mostly full access to all the parameter. We can read them, we can add and delete them. And then on the device basis, we are capable to store information in the device context. So if you want to execute something, you want to store and remember the data afterwards, there's no problem. So we have here asset text, user data 1, 2, 3, 4, yeah, and nodes. You can access storing data. It could be a JSON string, whatever makes sense for you. Yeah? This is a device context. By the way, you can also touch and write something in this area, but maybe you keep it as given by the device. And we have, in addition, the ability on site level or global level to use custom variables. So you have on the site, if you go to site name and far to the right, you see a tab custom variables, and you see we have used them as well already. So you can create manually records here and type as which category you have and which type relationship they have, if it's global or is it specific to a site, which name you provide is just text like a name, which type, this is a Boolean, IP, MAC number, string, and the content itself. This can be created like I do here in this moment in time, or your script calling a northbound API call, creating and deleting, managing this content. So this should help you a lot to store information. Yeah, I hope this addresses this question.
Yeah, I think it is. Thank you, Marcus. Another one we have. Can we start a workflow from an API call to XMC?
Oh yes, indeed we can. So northbound interface is key for this, that we can call workflows. So just, you see that I'm using here the documentation interface of my northbound, my XMC. Let me call this NBI, voila. And then this is the onboard API documentation interface. And this northbound interface using a special query language, GraphQL, which is pretty cool in case of making queries. And on the right-hand side, you have a schema browser. So what we can do is if we want to go to the query category, so we touch this block, we have one area which is called workflow. And we can go further and see which is actively running, or we can ask which workflow exists in the system, or which is completed, or is still in executed, and so on. And you can kick them as well. So that means if I want to read all my workflow, let me have a try, hope that works. Good, workflow, and then let's call all workflow, this sounds good. And I just press run. You get only the ID, because if you go deeper inside this all workflows, you see that you have plenty of parameters. So I wasn't providing any parameters, so they give me just the ID. So maybe I calling the name, maybe I calling the, what is interesting to version. So there's tons of parameter, man. And if I click again, I see now names and version numbering and whatever data belong to this workflow. And this is the way also how we execute. Yeah? So you,
Great.
and this is exactly the way how you should work. So with the example of Ansible, yeah, they should call this northbound interface, finally kick a workflow, handing over data, and then it becomes executed via XMC against the switches. Yeah? Okay.
Yep. Yeah, and another one. So in our examples, we showed how XMC uses CLI to configure switches. Are there any other ways of doing that, like SNMP or netcon or some other mechanisms?
So first of all, the switch drives the game. Yeah? So if the switch has the interface in place, then we can use it. If they don't, we can't. Yeah? Simple like this. So CLI mostly always works, but it's not our preferred choice. Yeah. So in case of VSPs, we can use a REST-conf API, and we can call them from XMC, yeah, if you want. All is on board to do this. It's maybe not a simple task. You have seen in my demo that I was showing you the developer environment and some long lines of code. This is all what you have to write to make it happen. But you can embed a class, a Python class into XMC, and then using in your scripts just a reference to the class, and then the life is much easier. Yeah. Then, so another way is using SNMP. So we provide out of the box in XMC SNMP calls. If you're familiar with, you can go for. It's much faster than CLI for sure, but you have more burden to manage all these calls, and you have to know exactly how the MIP behaves and what your data get returned. Yeah? So this is maybe a challenge with SNMP. But again, I reference to my workshop, and I know they are not really public. So it's a class workshop, so you have to go through a face-to-face meeting with me to get this information. So we do have here a workshop in example for this northbound call, if we stay with this topic. And let me open it, scroll down to workflows. And, oh, this was the wrong button. Too bad, sorry. I just press F5, this was not my intent. It should be Shift F5, and now the workflow execution example, and here I explain how it exactly works. Yeah? How to call workflows which are existing, and then what you have to do, and so on, next step. And this is for workflows and also for some advanced coding. So this is something for guys like you having more insights about how it works. And if we stay with this SNMP topic, yeah, it works like this. So you have to import some special libraries, yeah, or classes, how we call it. You have to qualify which data you want to query. So this is a binding list for SNMP, and then you run this query and you get back the result. Simple like this. It's nothing special. You have a little bit to know how to call it initially, but that's it. So if you keen, even you can do changes, no problem. But again, here we are reaching a point where you have to have some developer skills. Yeah? It's for a beginner, not a good choice to go for. CLI is more easy in case of first usage, but CLI scraping is a challenge. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I think we see a lot of interest in your 2 days course, and actually we have some requests on how people can actually get access to it. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe just to give you some idea what I'm doing here. So just sharing the content will not really work, because you have to have some wording to the content, explaining why it behaves or what the sense is, and also it's an interactive session finally. Yeah? So we go through some Python basics, then the speciality of XMC Python implementation, then workflow manager explicit, then GitHub. Okay, this is the easy one. And then the next, and this fill up 1 day already, yeah, because we go deep inside, yeah. And then the second day is about northbound interface. This eat half a day already. It's a cool interface. If you understand this, you will love it, but it takes a while to step in. And other is then advanced coding, giving you some insights and tricks to make something even nicer. And finally, using the Python IDE in conjunction with XMC. This means a developer environment on my laptop that I can coding XMC related Python code. There's some tricks. I also explain a bit about GitHub, GNS3, that you have to create your own playground because all the labs are based on GNS3. And so you have plenty of labs, and I have even advanced labs here for crazy guys. So you can here use and code like hell. Okay.
Okay.
So I sell myself. It looks like I have to come over as next.
You did. Okay. So if we just get a little bit back to the previous question. XMC does not provide the abstraction for configuring the switches.
Not necessarily in all the places. So this is an action item we have to make it better in future. So we do have in the manager world some ability, but they are very basic in my view, to let me just calling this what was this box? Yeah, HTTP activity. And here you can call URLs, and you can call so you see here you can do a post, you can do a put, a delete, something like this, a basic operation. You can qualify your URL and header parameter. You can use basic identification. So that means you can do some API calls here. But if it becomes more complex, it may be more challenge then, yeah. But this is for simple API calls the way to go for. But we are intend to make it even better. So with 8.5, I'm sorry, I was asking to have a kind of API module here, and that you drag and drop and do some more sophisticated things, and more abstraction, yeah, let me say. Yeah, but this takes a while. I'm not sure this will be in 8.5.0. I don't believe so. This will be 8.5.3 maybe, yeah. Okay, some other question around?
Yeah, I think the last one that I see, at least on the Q&A panel. Is there any idea of having a tool that would allow us to import some relational parameter structures from some other systems like database and XMC?
Not sure what the one which asking this question is looking for. But we do have a database inside, but there's not the intent to touch the database and populate them. What you can, I didn't really catch the use case behind. What we can do, and this makes most sense, is for access control, an example. If you have a facility database, asset database, where you have all your MAC addresses stored from your computers, an example, and you want to sync them with XMC, you can use the guest and IoT manager API. So you have to deploy the guest manager. Or, and this is maybe a smarter alternative, is that you're using here this store using northbound calls to populate or delete or manage the MAC address. So you can create groups, you can delete, you can add them, and you can fully control this environment. And this maybe helps to address some needs. So this is a classical use case in my view for many customers. Yeah. But I'm not sure about this relation of database structure or data structure they want to implement here. This is
I think the question is more about like the opportunity to import some data structures from external systems, just so that XMC understands how to handle them.
Yeah, we are not so open in this case that we allow you to do this. No, and I don't really see an intent. Maybe here's more clever to have a kind of middleware like Ansible do, or you maybe can do with your own scripting to incorporate XMC with other environments. Yeah. And the data then stored maybe in another place, but XMC not allowing you to have a free creation of data structure.
Okay, thank you, Marcus. Thank you for extensive answers. so we don't have any outstanding questions as of now. So probably if we go just through.
Yeah, if I'm not entirely sure, I maybe show this already, is a use case where we were spending a bit time with our professional service, and this also belonged to using APIs and do some complex changes. So it's just as a wrap up here. So one customer, they operate a network, and they was operating this network until mid of last year. And maybe 2 years ago, I was presenting XMC to the customer and told them, here we have the script and workflow capability. And they say, wow, it's cool. Let's use them. I have a problem. And I say, oops. Now, so oops means they have a little bit challenging job. So the job was, they have tons of Juniper switches, so stacks of 1,000 edge switches, more or less. They have MLX, so the old Brocade gear in the distribution. And you can believe me or not, they're using untagged, a single VLAN here across like this, like a U, yeah? And this is another VLAN, so that they don't create loops, but it's very simple. You cannot make it simpler than this. So it was okay for a while, but finally they got new requirements and they can't operate like this. And they even have to phase out the Juniper box, which becomes pretty old. Yeah. So the mission was to convert the setup to a more state-of-the-art one, creating MLAX managed by LACP trunking protocol, as well introducing VLAN tagging, and finally adding more VLANs. Yeah. So to do such kind of change, if you have it on in your lab on a table, okay, that takes some minutes, but then you're fine. Yeah? This customer is different. They operate around the clock, the network. That means the production cannot stop. The weekend is a free slot to do something. And if they do changes, they have to respect complex rules. One is checking the status up front, how many LDP neighbors exist, how long the routing table, and tons of other parameters. Yeah? If anything captured, then they apply the change. And in this case, we interrupt the network, because if you do a change only on one side, it breaks the communication until the opposite side it will follow. So that means you have an outage for sure, yeah? And different places. And if you see what I explained in the early beginning, if we do it as a human activity, guess what? After some hours, some days, you may be not so concentrated, and then you fail. You do something wrong. So you have to troubleshoot going back. So it's a task. So they see a lot of man weeks. They can do not too much in parallel. So this was the challenge. So interesting is the Juniper have ability to use an API on the switch, which we have utilized to catch the data. The good thing was an API call that we got the data back in a JSON structure. So we don't have to parse. This is perfect. And also we was able to apply most of the changes, but not all of them, against the switch. So that means the API was nice to have, but finally they didn't expose all the features and functions via the API. Yeah. This is also a reality, that if someone say they have an API, hooray, doesn't necessarily mean that all features and functions are available now. Yeah. So API call was used here. The MLX, we used some partial calls, but finally we was doing also maybe 50% of the job via CLI. So let's move on. So this is a workflow. You have learned these yellow boxes are ones which are taking care of Python scripts. So we have a starting point, the Juniper switch on axis. Then we automatically figure out who is the right distribution layer. So finding the two MLX boxes, learning the information in this layer. So this runs in parallel. Then we joining together this process and make here a conclusion if it makes sense to apply the change, and all prerequisites satisfied. The right software load in place, did we get the right information for indexing something, and so on, was maybe checks 20 minimum, even more checks we have to apply here. And then we make it, so we prove a triangle, by the way. So and then if anything goes right, we go this path, otherwise we have to escape. Yeah. And then it goes further. So we start on the axis. So we manipulate the Juniper box. And one thing is nice on this box. So far you do the change, you do a commit. and you can do a recommit after a while. So that means we change the box, and if we not come back in the next 10 minutes, they revert the change automatically. Cool. I love this feature, by the way. So if anything goes right with applying the change, we go back to the MLX layer and changing here both boxes. That means we have to create an MCT cluster and all the things to do. There's a lot of things to change. So we have to rip out the old settings and convert them to a new settings. If this completed, we wait here a little while in this box and prove if this access switch is reachable. Means in case of simple pings, see how many pings we're losing over time, and also how the round trip delay is to measure if they are okay. So the sense behind was, if we have 100 milliseconds in a local area network, it's far too long. That means maybe here's a potential loop. This is just the experience from the operators, they told me. So we use this information to make decisions here. And if anything goes right and we are in the right criteria, we're moving on to commit the change. So we go back to the Juniper box, say yes, commit, and stay with this configuration. And then we just leaving and finish. If something goes wrong here in this point of view, so we measure something, we say, oh, that's not good at all, and we have to revert back. There was another complex requirement. Does the customer say, yeah, blah, you have to roll back the changes? And it means we have to go back to the both MLX boxes and return all the changes. This was a heavy task, and it took a while to make it really right. Okay. So we have 3 phases, discovery, finding out all the information, gathering information. The cool thing was XMC helping us to understand topologies. We don't have to inspect the device to get out the information. We don't have, so there's another aspect. XMC know by heart already a lot of data which stored in a database. We just talking to our own database, seeing the relation and version numbers and. And these are API calls to the northbound interface. So then applying the change, in the worst case, rolling back. And what else we have? So parallel execution, that we fork, do something in a synchronized way. Why not? And we have gateways to make decision if it's good to go left, right, up, down. Yeah. And even notification was required too, to document all the change states. Yeah. If something goes wrong, that we have a documentation why, which phase was completed, which was hanging, or what the problem was. Yeah, that's pretty nice. So we don't send any SNMP trap, no email, nothing. It's just in the XMC log. Just in case of trouble, we send a notification. So we have also a mechanism in place that the workflow not runs multiple times. So customers say change one by one, not all together. So we have a mechanism to avoid multiple execution and lock them, and we have to freeze the lock. Yeah. Okay. So let's run first time. So anything should be right for a change. So you see some green bubbles, some few gray bubbles on the bottom. So the flow was running through like this. And the user experience was that they're losing connectivity for 30 seconds, and this on the weekend. So mostly nobody was there. So this was not a problem, goes fast. The whole change took them 2 minutes. This is given by this proving process and waiting cycles and so on. But if this process is established, you can repeat this easily multiple times with very small risk of problems, yeah, because it's proven now. Another case is if the change may be already applied, the operator kicks the workflow against the setup which was already changed. Can be happen, yeah? Why not? So then it's the easy one, we just escape. If this prerequisite's not given, the checkpoint was here, then we escape. It could be that maybe one MLX was not in operation, was broken, whatever, power supply, that. Then we don't do the change, in example. Or we have to allocate here an index number for getting in next index, free index for trunking. If it's not free or something corrupted, then we don't do the change. Yeah? So in this case, change was already applied, all right, then good. Going. And this is what we very often tested is if something goes wrong. So what we did is, yeah, you see the flow is a little bit more challenging here, going from top to the bottom, but left to right as well, and it's like a cycle back. You can design your workflows as ever you want. You can have multiple exit points. Sorry. However, it should be a little bit structured that you can orientate yourself. Yeah, you can also create here a big mess in the optic. Let me say. Yeah, and finally, what the trick was for our lab, we just poisoned the test criteria that we fail, and then to do the rollback. And since this was in place, the customer did these changes first time, so one by one, maybe in the first and second weekend, and then they becomes really confident that the change works well, and they trigger more and more in parallel. Finally, the change was really a success by changing a lot of access in a short notice with a very few amount of man effort. The key here in the background was also the success utilizing professional service of Extreme, because they had the expertise and you have a supported workflow. So that was the story, and I reach also this end. And I think we are good. In case of timing, any new question comes up so far, or we okay?
We are absolutely good, Marcus. We don't have any outstanding questions. However, I would like to ask everybody to stay for another couple of minutes, just the traditional closing out information from my side. Let me quickly start sharing. And in the meantime, I would like to ask everybody to answer our traditional question in the poll. All right, so thank you, Marcus. Thank you very much for this session. I think it was a great introduction to the world of APIs and scripting and how to use that, how to utilize actually, and how to make some use out of that with Extreme products and Extreme solutions. So next session is going to take place on next Thursday. So it's 14th of May, 10 a.m. CET, the same time, the same place. And we will talk about various tools that are available to you, our partners, distributors, and our customers as well, in terms of learning, in terms of getting the right documentation, in terms of getting the right support. And I think that the cornerstone for this session will be how to utilize the Iris tool that is intended to be used to design the solutions and to quickly help you to build networking topologies and build the projects out of that. So just a few more words. I'm really sorry for any inconvenience caused by the quality issues. So we saw all the complaints coming from you folks. So it's really, really hard to predict how Zoom quality will go. We will, on our end, we will try to find out the ways to improve the quality next time. And there's also an ask to you from my side. Please, for the next time, make sure you are running the latest version of Zoom. Sometimes this can help. Okay, so with that said, once again, Marcus, thank you very much for delivering the session. The SC team, thank you for handling the Q&A, as well as helping with some issues that we got along the way. And see you next time. Stay safe.